Virtually every time I come into contact with a OCS research student and ask them basic questions about the most recent pre-scene, their knowledge is sketchy. What we can't do is arrive on exam day not knowing the basics. Welcome everybody to this first video, Intro to Company, for your new OCS case on fireworks. The key points here that I'll outline, 10 of them, are the core relating to the company. And indeed, when we come on to Intro to Industry, again, you'll get some core points that I picked out from this pre-scene. Now let's remember that our understanding of the OCS pre-scene is really based around questions. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. We need to know the answers to those questions. And indeed, across these first 3 videos, Intro to Co, Intro to Industry, and indeed the timeline, we're going to start with some key information. So, introduction to company. The first point is really about who and what. What are we talking about here? This is a family-owned, successful company based in Beeland that provide standalone grills, outdoor grills, 3 main types: charcoal, gas, and electric. Our second point is who's involved. Who are the founders of this company? Well, going back to 1984, we have a husband and wife team, David Wheeler and Debbie Wheeler. David with a marketing background, and indeed Debbie with a production stroke manufacturing background. Now, they've actually retired now as of 2018, and their youngest daughter, Catherine Wheeler, joined the company in 2014, and as of 2018 took over the helm. Third point, business model. How do they operate? Well, looking back to the 1980s, David and Debbie, the original founders, had a passion for food and indeed a passion for the outdoors, and they basically combined that. They saw within Beeland that there was a gap in the market, a gap for quality, easy to use grills. And indeed, note that they decided to really supply in the main B2B or business to business. They don't operate through retail. They do have a website where they get 20% of their sales from, but in essence, they produce, manufacture, and indeed ship these grills out of the 3 types to mainly to retailers. Note that with Catherine on board now, their youngest daughter, added into what I just said about their model, she's obviously a little bit younger than her parents, and she has a passion for things that are quite important, certainly in the 21st century, sustainability, CSR, etc. Our next key point is their operations, quite a basic point here. As I've said, they're a manufacturing company. They operate out of 3 main sites. They have their head office, I guess admin, if you will. They have their production facility, manufacturing, and indeed outside of that, they have their distribution center. Fifth key point is the financials. I've said that they're successful. How successful are they? Well, in the most recent period, 30th of June 2022, revenues at Beeland dollars 76.5 million. Pretty sizable. Gross profit at 32.2 million, and indeed profit before tax 6.9 million. This is a well-established, long-standing, successful company that is giving consumers in Beeland and indeed elsewhere what they want. 6th point is HR, or staff. Now they have 316 employees spread across the 3 main areas. Production, 190, as you'd expect, more than half. Distribution, 85. And at head office, note, including you, remember you are an employee of this company, 41 people. Now, outside of the success that clearly they have, I mean, what do they do in terms of their sales side? So what's the breakdown of this 76.5 million broadly B2B, to some extent B2C? Well, retailers, they supply to retailers who sell on to consumers directly, and that's 68% of their sales. Their website, which was established in the early noughties, Beeland only, mind, 20% of their sales. And then the third area, third-party overseas agents, 12%. So in terms of their sales, and note that they sold, I believe in the most recent year, slightly in excess of 192,000 grills, is split three ways. Mainly retailers, some from the website, and some through these third-party overseas agents. Now, we talked about the founders, we talked about the staff. What about the board? Well, the board, as mentioned, is led by their youngest daughter, Catherine Wheeler. Now, she is a qualified chef with a passion for food like her parents, and she's been on board since 2018 as the MD. 2014 she joined. Now, along with her, we have 5 other executive directors. Remember that this is a private limited company. We don't have NEDs. We don't have any issues with corporate governance. Now, in terms of the directors, they're across the main heads that you would experience indeed in real life and that you would expect. Finance director, production, sales and marketing, HR, and distribution and logistics. Looking at the background of each of the executive directors, indeed including Catherine, this is a very, very experienced and well-trained group with good, broad range of skills across a variety of different areas. Our next point is ownership. This is a private company, and it looks to me is that on the back of an inheritance for David and Debbie back in 1984, they set up the company, and they have an issued share capital currently of $1 million Beeland. Now, we're not told, but I would suggest more than likely that that shareholding is split 50-50. 50-50 between David and indeed Debbie. They're only recently retired. Remember, I wouldn't suggest that they've sold their shares. They may have done, but probably it's a 50-50 split. And indeed, over and above the shareholding, note that most recently, the declared dividend, or indeed the paid dividend, 2022, $3 million Beeland. Now, that's a 58% DPR, or dividend payout ratio. So they're certainly not shy in rewarding themselves, but they worked hard for many, many years, and they pay themselves out to a high degree. Now, over and above the ownership, what about borrowings? What about borrowings? Well, borrowings on the face of the balance sheet, $2.3 million Beeland. Now, they may well be bank borrowings. They could be borrowings through VC. We're not told. But I think that the way that things have gone here with this company, Fireworks, is that they issued share capital, probably all of it at the outset in 1984, and indeed over the course of time, they've borrowed. Now, if you look at the gearing side, they're not really, heavily geared. I think gearing ratios are around about 10 or 12% or thereabouts. Note the ratio analysis video that you'll see towards the end of the course, and make sure that you have a fix on the big numbers there, the GP, the gearing, net profit margin, etc., etc., etc. Final point really is the accounting side. 1 or 2 points here, linking it back to the operational level syllabus, and indeed the type of questions that the examiner likes to ask in the OCS exam. What we have is a company that uses a standard costing approach, as you would expect. Outside of that, absorption costing is used based on direct labor hours or machine hours. Indeed, over and above that, final point, an incremental approach to budgeting. Now, let's note that certainly with the OCS exam, in my experience, there's a heavy emphasis on CIMA P1, and we know how much of the CIMA P1 syllabus is based on costing and indeed costing techniques. pros and cons, and indeed outside of that, budgeting and budgeting techniques and pros and cons. Those are go-to questions for this OCS examiner. So let's be up on alternatives to absorption costing. What are they? We know what they are. Let's be up on alternatives to incremental budgeting. What are they? We know what they are. We have to start thinking now of possible topic areas and revising any weak points that we may well have. Okay, so there's our 10 key points. I hope that you found that sort of brief summary helpful. And let's make sure that you absorb your role as a finance person within this entity. Remember, you are an employee. You're not a CIMA student. You're an employee of a company, and you're going to be asked to perform some tasks on exam day as an employee. Okay? Thank you for listening. I hope that you found that helpful. Please do join me for Intro to Industry, our next video. And indeed, good luck with your studies.